Okay, here we are. I think, hello, ladies. Thank you all for joining me again this weekend while we talk about stress. I decided to make some internet upgrades and also stream directly into Facebook. Thank you all for bearing with the technical difficulties yesterday. If you weren't a part of that, be grateful. It was a disaster, but hey, we're all human, right? So as you come online and join me, just say hello in the comments, type in live or replay, or just say whatever you want to let our tribe know that you're here and tuned in. Today's topic is going to be about stress. It's in the same vein of sleep, stress, and movement that we started last week, right? So we talked a little bit about stress last week. We talked a lot about sleep last week and the importance of good quality sleep on so many different functions of your body and what happens to our brain and our cells and our body when we're sleeping at night, hard at work. I suggest and highly recommend you go back and listen to that video. Should be in the media section if you missed it. And we also talked about how sleep, or rather the lack of sleep, is certainly a form of stress for our body. Hi, Robin. Good. I can see the comments and everything today. So this looks to be working much better so far. So let me start. Today, we're going to talk about stress. What is stress? Different kinds of stress. What happens to our body? Hi, Bonita. What happens to our bodies when we're under stress? And all sorts of things like that, just so that we can have a full understanding or a better understanding of why managing our stress is so important for health. So let's start with a quick definition of what is stress. It's obviously a word that we hear all the time in our culture, and it's something we all experience regularly, if not every day, right? So at root level, stress is basically just your body's response, your internal response to an external stimulus or challenging situation or sometimes threat, right? So whatever that external stimulus is, that is what's called a stressor, right? So stress is then your body's internal response to a stressor. So let's talk about that word a little bit, stressor. What are the different kinds of stress that we could experience in our lives, right? There's basically three types of stress. The one that we think about in our day and age the most often is probably emotional stress, right? Something happens to us that we don't like, and we have just this cascade of emotional reactions, right, for whatever reason. And we have a hard time coping. We really can't handle whether it's somebody yelled at us or the loss of a loved one or the end of a relationship or a personal failure that we perceive to have, or our children not succeeding, or our friends, we're in a fight with our friends. All those things are emotional stressors, right? And they are very, very challenging for most of us to recover from, especially if we don't feel good and we're sleep deprived, right? But that is but one form of stress. Another form of stress is physical stress. And this is not always a bad form of stress, right? This is what you'll hear people that work out a lot and do any kind of weightlifting, they'll talk about time under tension for the muscle, right? Your muscle has to be in that zone, the time under tension, where it's physically breaking down. It has to go through that stress in order to come back and build back stronger. If you think about it really for a second, it's kind of the same for our mindset and our emotions. But physical stress is, that's the sort of classic original definition of stress, right? It is our body's reaction to oh my God, I have to run from a lion, right? That is at root level what the physical stress response is about. It is a an organic physical challenge or threat that we experience sort of in the flesh, not in our minds, but in our actual physical body. And then we have some things, let me go back a second. Another kind of physical stress is what we talked about last week, a lack of sleep, right? That's a physical condition. It's not in our heads, it's not in our thoughts or our feelings. That is a physical state. Poor digestion that we've talked about before, that can also be a form of stress. Let's see. Okay, so if you guys can think of any more physical forms of stress where you wonder, like, is this a physical form of stress? Just type it in the chat and I'll see and let you know. The last category of stressors or stress is going to be environmental stress. So there are some aspects of an environmental stressor that we can avoid and some that we can't. So the ones that we cannot avoid all the time are going to be mold exposure or living lots of EMF frequency coming into our house or into our life or into our office, right? We can do some things about EMF frequency when it comes to turning off our Wi-Fi and not standing right next to the microwave as it's going, things like that. But the other thing that is a part of environmental stressors is going to be chemicals that you directly put on your skin, right? So when you put on makeup or when you put on lotion or when you wash your hair or when you clean your house, you're coming in your skin, which is the biggest organism in your body, right? Your skin is coming into direct contact with potentially chemicals that are harmful for you, and your body is going to like soak them right up, right? Because you put them on your skin. So bear that in mind as you clean and use lipstick and sunscreen and hairspray and Clorox and Lysol and all of that. You just something to keep in the back of your mind that can also be a stressor for your body that is found in the environment in which you live, right? Sometimes environment and emotional stressors kind of tie together, right? Maybe you're not in a very healthy home environment emotionally, and that can be sort of a compounding effect to stress in your life. So, all right, what happens in our mind and really we're going to talk about physiologically today. What happens inside our body with our hormones and the way our systems react whenever we encounter stress from any one of those three categories? Well, there's in the literature and in my training, there is 3 stages of the body's physiological stress response. The first one is the one that we are the most familiar with, and that is called the alarm stage, right? So that is, again, going back to the lion, our caveman ancestors, walking along, hunting, and all of a sudden, like, there's a lion, and then immediately several things happen inside your body. Or you can think of it in a modern day example, like let's say you're sitting down reading a book or you're sleeping at night and all of a sudden you hear this like really loud noise and you don't know what the heck it is. In that moment where the stressor is unidentified or immediate in the case of the lion, your body releases a cascade of hormones from your brain and your adrenal glands, and it's a 2-step response, but for our purposes today, let's just assume that they all happen at the same time because it's like a matter of seconds in between. The big one that releases is cortisol, right? We've talked about cortisol, your stress hormone. We talked about it a little bit in digestion, in the sense that if stress is happening, digestion is not, because in that moment when an acute alarm stress response has occurred, all your body cares about is keeping you alive, right? Digestion in that moment is not essential to keeping you alive. Being able to run quickly and get away from the perceived stressor, that is what is critical to keeping you alive. So your body is internally going to release cortisol. One of the things that cortisol does is it increases blood sugar in your system. It will pull blood sugar out of your cells. It will stimulate your liver. to produce blood sugar. Your liver is actually fully capable of making glucose on its own. It's actually fully capable of making all the glucose you need to survive on its own, which is one of the reasons why we do not need to actually consume dietary sources of sugar, but more on that at a later date. So glucose reserves are going to like come raging out into your bloodstream because that is like the kindling on a campfire, right? That is your immediate fast burn energy source. So in that moment of fight or flight, that is what your body is going to release into your bloodstream for energy. So your blood sugar is going to go up. The other things that your body needs to regenerate and also have energy, it needs to make something called ATP. It's a long science word that sometimes I can't pronounce right, so we're just going to call it ATP. But the two components of ATP are fatty acids, which your body creates from breaking down proteins. If you've not just eaten protein, then your body in this initial stress response stage will actually break down your own internal protein, your muscles, and all that stuff, just a little, to release the amino acids that it needs. And the other component of ATP is triglycerides, fat. So it will release from your cells or anywhere else that it's stored up extra adipose tissue, body fat. It'll release that into your bloodstream. So all those things are happening within like 15 seconds of they're beginning to happen. Oops, hold on. Sorry, my eye itch. All that's happening within the first few seconds to maybe 10 or 15 minutes after that initial like alarm stage stressor. All those things is a very normal stress response. That is exactly what our body was created to do, because that is the necessary response to the lion is about to eat me, right? Which is really, that's every time you experience stress, that's all your body thinks on the inside is, the lion's about to eat me, I've got to get away. But that kind of alarm stage of stress is only intended to last for a short time, right? Running from a lion, you're either going to get away from that lion like in the first few minutes or you're not, right? We were not intended to run marathons to get away from the lion. So when that kind of alarm stage stress reaction is required to be maintained for an extended period of time, like, right? That is when the stress response kind of starts to alter a little bit. Now, go back to the example about the loud noise, right? When you get up and you find, okay, all right, the loud noise was generated by the wind knocked over a vase and it broke on the floor. Or for some reason, if you're me, for example, the cat knocked over a book again and it fell on the floor. Okay, now we know that the source of that stress is not actually going to kill us, so our body can sort of dial down the alarm stage stress response. That's how the process is supposed to work. But if it doesn't, right? If the source of the stressor is something that is somewhat pervasive, right? It's not immediate response, okay, let's have a reaction, okay, now threat over, we can go back to normal operating procedures. If that's not the case, if the source of the stress is persistent for any of the reasons I mentioned earlier, if it's bad home environment, chronically broken digestion, like ongoing stress from work, ongoing emotional stressors from relationships that are strained with your loved ones, ongoing exposure to environmental sources of stressors. When we ask our bodies to maintain that alarm stage stress response for an extended period of time is when we enter the second stage of the stress response, which is called the resistance stage. So your body is designed, the good Lord designed all of us to be very adaptable creatures, right? So in almost every situation, if we ask our body to overcome whatever it is we're experiencing, our body will find a way to do it. But that often comes with a price, right? Whenever we ask our bodies to adapt to a situation that is abnormal or outside of homeostasis, that's a word you'll hear me use. Let me just define it real quick for those that may not know Homeostasis is basically a state of your body being in balance. It is the place where your body always wants to get to. Remember, we talked about in sleep last week that one of the things your body does while you're sleeping is regulate your blood sugar to get it back to a set point of 89. That is the desired state of that is the desired homeostasis point for blood sugar is 89, right? And while we're on set points, there are two other ones that are critical to life, and that is the pH of your blood and your oxygenation levels, right? So those are three primary set points, two of which, pH and oxygenation, are, if those things go out of balance, like life will expire. That is what will happen pretty quickly. So when it comes to those two things, and blood sugar, not as critical, but it's really close. Like you're not going to die right away if your blood sugar goes out of whack, but eventually over time, lots of bad things will happen, right? Your body will fight to do everything it possibly can to keep you in a state of homeostasis. So when we are asking it to maintain an adaptive stress response over a prolonged period of time, it must rob Peter to pay Paul. Like, other parts of your bodily functions are going to start to suffer because you're asking your body to adapt in a way that keeps you fighting to get back to that place of homeostasis, right? Because you're doing something that your body was not intended to do for long periods of time. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Let me know in the comments. Did that actually make sense? Because I feel like I just went in a circle, but I think I brought it back together. So we are going to move on. It is possible to go in and out of alarm stage and resistance stage. Like for me, earlier this year, for the first 2 months of this year, I was in DC. And this is 2021, so January and February 2021 brought some very interesting events in our nation's capital. And because of what my day job is at the moment, I experienced sort of a persistent low-level stress that followed me home, actually, to Mississippi when I came home in March. It took me the better part of the month of March to get myself out of that stress resistance stage, to work on my mindset and my sleep and my digestion and my emotional well-being and all of those things, to allow my body to realize it did not need to stay in the adaptive stress phase anymore. It could return to full homeostasis. So it's possible that we can go in and out of those stages, but I mean, some things are going to suffer when we do that, right? Like for me, I could not sleep. I couldn't sleep well for like 3 months because of the low level stress. And other things suffered as a result. Like we talked about last week, my emotions were raw, my mindset was not great, my ability to cope with other stressors at work was a little impaired. I certainly haven't been doing as much physical movement as I like to. So this is the robbing Peter to pay Paul process. If this goes on indefinitely, right? If you ask your body to stay in this adaptive stress response stage indefinitely, over time, you will enter stage 3 of the stress response, which is the exhaustion stage. Your adrenal glands cannot produce cortisol, sufficient levels of cortisol, indefinitely. They will fail at some point. And when that happens, you will be exhausted across the board. Like, there is a legit medical state called adrenal fatigue that a lot of people experience when they get to this point that renders them unable to get out of the bed. And that it is something that is repairable with medical help and some really hard lifestyle changes. But absolutely better to sort of get a handle of this stress stage and not let it get to the exhaustion phase. Because basically, in the robbing Peter to pay Paul scenario, Peter is now broke, but you're still trying to rob him. Peter going to come for you eventually. Your body will shut you down if you ask it to be in this adaptive stress stage for too long. We've all experienced that or I know I have, right? I know what my initial body signs are when I'm fighting with some exhaustion or some illness. And I know how it feels that when my body is sending up the red flares, you need to stop, Todd Hill. Like, you've got to give me a break or I will shut you down. Every time I ignore those flares, I'm in bed for a week. I'll get sick and it's terrible. I know you have all had a similar experience like that in your life. That is the exhaustion stage, a little microcosm of it, when your body simply shuts you down so that it can actually finally rest and heal and return to homeostasis. So, in those moments, if we force our body all the way into that exhaustion stage for too long and too many times, that is when we will start to experience some major health issues, right? That is when autoimmune conditions present. That is when disease presents, that cardiovascular disease, diabetes, all these diseases of the modern era can be in part directly tied back to consistently over a prolonged period of time being in this adaptive stress response stage, so that our body has no choice but to force us into the exhaustion stage, because otherwise our overall health and well-being are really, really in crisis mode jeopardy. So what breaks what are the things when I say rob Peter to pay Paul, right? What are we robbing in that adaptive stage? So we talked about a lot of it before. Digestion. If stress is happening, digestion is not. If digestion is not happening, nutrient absorption is not happening. If we are not getting the nutrients that we need, proper mental function is not happening. Physical health is not happening. Our strength, both mentally and physically, will diminish. Our blood sugar will exceed normal levels over time, and we will enter most likely pre-diabetes or full-on diabetes, because our body simply cannot complete that process if all the other things are broken, right? We likely will also have a hard time digesting. We won't feel good if we eat a lot of fat, even though in previous lessons I said healthy sources of dietary fat are absolutely critical for cellular health and mental clarity and overall bodily function. If you are in this adaptive or exhaustive stress response stage and your digestion is broken, you're not going to make the right enzymes to properly break down and absorb that fat. And when you deprive yourself of fatty acids, right, what did I say were two components of ATP, which is critical for energy and cellular repair? Triglycerides, which are fatty acids, and amino acids, which are proteins. So if you can't break down and digest your fat, then your body is unable to make a critical component of ATP. It's not able to heal itself correctly at the cellular level, and a whole host of other issues will start occurring. The other thing I wanted to touch on real briefly is mineral imbalance. When we have broken nutrient absorption, digestion broken, chronic stress response, there's 3 key minerals that become depleted in our body. And these 3 really do interact with each other, especially calcium and magnesium. Those are 2 of the 3. Zinc is the 3rd. So many functions in our body rely on these 3 minerals: calcium, magnesium, and zinc. They are what we call cofactors to a host of physiological processes and hormone productions that are absolutely fundamentally important for our health. With respect to zinc, just here in the COVID era, we've all heard about how important zinc is to your immune system. Absolutely, unequivocally, that is true. However, because 80 to 90% of your immune system exists in your gut, if your digestion is broken, then you can supplement with zinc as the day is long, and you will not receive a fraction of the benefits from it as you normally would because your immune system is already compromised. Calcium and magnesium, one of the most important things that they do is calcium obviously makes your bones strong and all of that, but it also causes your muscles to contract. The balance with magnesium, if it's in its correct ratio, magnesium causes your muscles to relax. That's digestive muscles, bowel movement muscles, heart muscles, mind muscles, all the muscles. So if the balance is off between calcium and magnesium, you are likely going to start feeling some muscle cramps, Charlie horses when you sleep. Maybe your blood pressure is going to start elevating. You may start experiencing low level or pronounced cardiovascular issues because your heart muscle can't relax, and neither can any other muscle in your body. This is not all, but part of the reason why constipation happens sometimes, and those painful Charlie horses in the middle of the night, or pulse rate that goes out of control. Like, it's because your calcium and magnesium ratios are off, or you simply are extremely magnesium deficient, because magnesium is one of those minerals that is not present in our soil the way that it once was. Magnesium is also called Epsom salt, by the way. So if you garden, a lot of people will say put Epsom salt in your soil. Sage advice, because you're adding a mineral back to the soil that's essentially been farmed out of it over time. Cannot say enough about the health benefits of returning the magnesium stores in your body to the proper level. So, beyond taking supplements, which you can do, let's talk just real briefly about, all right, I hope you can see with everything I've just explained to you about stress, about how critical stress management is between last week's video and this week's video. So, movement and breathing, just real quick, are probably two of the best things that you can do, at least foundationally to start with, to get a handle on your stress levels. Breathing, we talked about deep breathing flips that switch in your nervous system from sympathetic fight or flight stress response to parasympathetic rest and digest response. Just some deep breathing before you eat, when you feel stressed, anything like that. Just return your focus into your body, into your breath. I actually just found this app called Calm. It's a meditation app. They do a lot of breathing work in there. I think they have a 30-day free trial going on right now. Check it out. Some people find just sitting down and saying a prayer like our grandparents did before a meal, or at any point in time when you feel that stress response coming on, the, proverbial let go and let God saying, easier said than done, I know, but if you just try to work on it with your breath. And when I talk about movement, I'm not talking about go spend hours at the gym. I'm talking about any kind of movement. Get up and stretch when you feel stressed. Take a walk with your loved one, or go for a walk by yourself in nature if that's something that you enjoy. Get out there in this wonderful spring weather. Dig around in the garden. Any kind of movement that your body can tolerate at this stage is better than just sitting there like a bump on a log, especially when it comes to stress management. That is one of the chief ways that your body can release some pressure from the stress bucket so it does not overflow. Breath and movement, any kind of movement. Walk around your house a few times, anything at all, to the extent that you can tolerate. So we are about out of time today. I feel like that was real fast and furious, so I'm sure that this is a subject we will revisit in the future. I also wanted to remind everybody that our free masterclass is starting on April 19th. I hope you have seen the banner that I changed the cover page of the group so that you can click it and sign up real quick. I am putting the finishing details on the workbook as we speak this afternoon, so check your emails. That will be coming to you shortly. I am going to tweak the timing a little bit, but I will put that in the email when I send you all the workbook. And as always, please, please, please share the group and the free masterclass and all of the stuff and things with your friends. Invite them to join the group, or simply send them the name of the group, they can search for it and ask to join themselves. And I would love to know, going forward, what are your questions? What would you like to learn about on these Saturday Live lessons? Well, it's Sunday today, but normally it will be Saturday Live lessons. And I've made a guide where hopefully it'll be a little bit easier now for everybody to find these live lessons going forward. They will be, I hope, if I've set it up right, all housed underneath that guide section section of our group that you should see now. Okay, thanks, Benita. I'm glad you found it so helpful. You guys have a lovely rest of your Saturday, and I will see you soon. I will not be going live next weekend because the group starts on Monday, the masterclass. So I am going to manage my stress by taking next weekend off to really make sure that I can come into the live on Monday evening and just really be present and come to you with lots of energy and focus. So that is my plan. The next time then that I will see you will be inside that master class starting on Monday, April 19th. It's going to be 6:30 Central, 7:30 Eastern time. And we should go probably for about this same length of time every night, between 15 and 30 minutes. So can't wait to see you all there. Thanks so much.